right, good morning, everyone. Can I get everyone's attention real quick? So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to City Club Missoula's April Forum, State of the Community. My name is Dave Peppinger. I have the privilege of serving as chair for City Club Missoula. Board of Directors, thank you all for being here today. On your table, you'll see a few flyers with QR codes. For those who don't know what QR codes, they're funky looking blots of ink. So they are for a survey that we're doing. We really could use your help. So if you can, just flip your phone to the photo, take a picture of it. It'll guide you to the QR code, and please answer the quick survey. So City Club's mission is to bring together people to inform and inspire on issues in the community that are vital through public forums that encourage the discussion of new ideas and free exchange of thought. We have a deep commitment to civility and civil discourse, even when discussing challenging issues. Before getting into the forum, let me give some sincere thank yous. Thanks to Missoula Community Access Television, which records each and every one of our forums as part of their media assistance grants to nonprofit organizations. MCAT serves our community on cable channels 189 and 190. MCAT occasionally live streams our forums on its local live platform as well. You can also find videos of the past City Club Missoula forums by clicking on the video button on our website, cityclubmissoula.com. Now, a special thank you to our sponsors, those at the executive level. They are Blackfoot Communications and First Security Bank. Our executive level sponsors are key partners in helping to expand our audience access and public awareness of upcoming forums. We're grateful to all of our sponsors, and we invite you to join. And of course, thanks to the Board of Directors. Without all of their tireless efforts, this wouldn't be going on. So, and then, how can I forget Yanni Robach, our executive assistant? So she's awesome. And so with that, let me get into the speakers. So today's panel, we have Dave Strohmaier, County Commission Chair, Seth Bodnar, University of Montana President, and Andrea Davis, the newest mayor of Missoula. So let me get through their bios real quick. They're very brief, of course. So Missoula County Commissioner Dave Strohmaier and his wife Gretchen have called Missoula home since 1997. Dave was first elected to the Missoula County Commission in 2016 and re-elected in 2022. From 2006 to 2013, Dave represented Ward 1 on the Missoula City Council. Prior to his time in elected office, Dave spent 18 years with the Bureau of Land Management and U.S. Forest Service in a variety of roles, and also worked 13 years in the private sector as a public historian and historical research assistant with Historical Research Assistant Incorporated, where he specialized in the environmental and Native American history. Dave holds an undergraduate degree at the Seattle Pacific University in religion philosophy and graduate degrees with Yale Divinity School, 1995 philosophy of religion, and the University of Montana, MS 1999 environmental studies. He is a published author, having written 2 books on the subject of fire, The Seasons of Fire, Reflections on Fire in the West, and Drift Smoke, Loss and Renewal in the Land of Fire. In January 2023, Dave began his second 6-year term on the Missoula Board of County Commissioners. As an outspoken advocate of public transportation, Dave spearheaded an effort to establish a regional rail authority through the southern tier of Montana in 2019. This culminated with the establishment of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority in the fall of 2020. He currently serves as the chair of the authority, now the biggest transportation district in the state of Montana. Beyond public service, Dave enjoys big game hunting, fishing, riding, and spending time in the backcountry with his wife, son, and daughter, and a Labrador retriever. Next, we have Seth Bodnar. So Seth was appointed in 2018 as the 19th president of the University of Montana, where his primary objective can be captured by 2 words: inclusive prosperity. Together with UM's faculty, staff, students, President Bodnar works to make high-quality education widely accessible and to help every member of the community reach their unique and full potential. During President Bodnar's tenure, UM has significantly improved rates of student retention and persistence, created new and innovative workforce training programs in partnership with employers across the state, launched the largest infrastructure renewal ever at UM, and completed the most successful fundraising campaign in campus history. After multiple years record-setting research growth, UM was reclassified in 2022 as an R1 research university, the highest of the Carnegie classifications, representing less than 4% of the universities nationwide. Before joining the University of Montana, President Bodnar was a senior executive at General Electric Company, serving as its first ever chief digital officer and leading GE's transportation digital solutions business. Prior to GE, President Bodnar served on the faculty at West Point, where he taught economics. President Bodnar graduated first in his class from West Point, received both the Rose and Truman scholarships, and earned 2 master's degrees from the University of Oxford. President Bodnar has a distinguished military career, serving in the 101st Airborne Division and the U.S. Army's 1st Special Forces Group. Thank you for your service. As a member of the Army's elite Green Beret, he commanded a Special Forces detachment on multiple deployments around the world and later served as a special assistant to the commanding general in Iraq. President Bodnar is the son of 2 educators and the husband of 5th-generation Montanan. He is proud to be raising 3 kids in Montana, and he considers it a great honor to be working on behalf of public education in such a special space. Andrea Davis. Missoula Mayor Andrea Davis was elected in November 2023. She grew up in Kalispell and earned a degree in organizational communications and environmental studies at the University of Montana. She has dedicated her 22-year career to building sustainable homes and strong communities. For the past 15 years as the executive director of a nonprofit, Homeward. She has deep experience developing and implementing policy and has held many leadership roles on statewide and local boards and committees. Her personal mission is to find inclusive solutions that exemplify the interrelated reality of our world. And with that, we'll start with Dave, and I'll be back.
Good morning, Missoula County. It is good to be here today. Thanks for the welcome, Dave, and thanks to City Club for hosting this annual event. Thanks to my colleagues on the stage here, Mayor Andrea Davis and President Bodnar. And on behalf of the Missoula Board of County Commissioners, thank you all for spending a little bit of your time on this April 15th day, otherwise known to some of you as opening day of turkey season. So I'm glad that you spent some time with us in spite of that. So the way these sorts of things work with the Board of County Commissioners, the chair position rotates every year. The last time I was here before all of you in one way was in 2021. And I say in one way because it was not in person. Rolling back the clock to 2021, how much has changed since then? In that year, I was looking at all of you through the screen of my laptop. The meeting was virtual. We were in the midst of a global pandemic like we have never seen in a century. My good friend and colleague, John Engen, was still mayor of Missoula. And then, as now, I begin by reminding all of us that whether you live in Condon, up the 9 Mile, in Lolo, or here in the heart of Missoula, we are all in Missoula County. There is not this sharp dividing line between the city and the county as if everything outside the city limits is the county. We are all Missoula County residents, although I did meet someone from Lake County earlier. Wherever you are, welcome to Missoula County today. First, before I get rolling here, a little bit of level setting. And by that I mean trying to ground us in the question of what is it that really matters and is enduring in life? Because only by contemplating that do we set the stage for anything that we do in public life. Back in 1999, I had the opportunity to take a writing workshop with the late Bill Kittredge, who some of you know and sadly is no longer with us. And this was down on the Teller Wildlife Refuge in the Bitterroot, and I specifically remember something that Bill said at that time. And the quote from Bill was, "All anyone really wants to do in life is be useful." Be useful. At the time and for some time thereafter, I thought that's too easy. That's pretty pithy. But is that really the case? And the more that I thought about that over the years, I think that absolutely is the case, although we might frame it differently. And that is exactly the ethos that my fellow commissioners, Josh Slotnick, Juanita Vero, and I try to and strive to every day when we show up at work to emulate and to try to make our community and this world just a little bit better than it was the day before. This year, also, I want to avoid just providing a laundry list of accomplishments over the past year or goals for the year to come. Not only would that bore me to death, but also, let's face it, the half-life of our memory from whatever we say up here is like a millisecond, and you will likely forget much, if all, of what we say by the time you leave the parking lot here. So I want to focus on just a handful of items, a couple items that we've been working on, and also in so doing, avoid the risk of providing a laundry list that makes it seem as if that's the full extent of everything that Missoula County is working on, when I know full well that out of the 1,100 dedicated employees of Missoula County government and the 43 departments that they represent, there is a ton of good, hard work, meaningful work being done every single day on behalf of all of you, our constituents, our friends and neighbors here in Missoula and Missoula County. And by being brief, and I really do hope to be brief here, that's not intended to overlook or gloss over the reality of the really hard and intractable issues that we are grappling with, whether it's housing, whether it's houselessness, whether it's climate action, whether it's tax reform. And I have a colleague who's a tax expert who will be joining us here shortly for Q&A if any of your questions fall on that area. But the list goes on. So today, when I want to spend the balance of my time talking about are two examples, two projects that I see as being emblematic of transformational change here in Missoula and in Missoula County, and spiraling out from Missoula County regionally and even nationally. And it just so happens that both of these projects relate to infrastructure. No surprise. So I begin with a part of our county and community that you might all be familiar with. If you were to travel out East Broadway, you will be traveling on State Highway 200, and this will take you into East Missoula. And so what you see on this image and the following one is on the left what you would see and experience out there today, although you might see it in color rather than black and white. And what you see on the right is an image out of our corridor, Highway 200 corridor planning document, as far as what the future possibility of this place could be. So if you were to drive out on Highway 200 today into East Missoula, what you would be greeted with is practically the wild, wild west of undifferentiated asphalt. It is a mess. It is an inhospitable place if you're a pedestrian. It's a challenge even if you're a driver of a motor vehicle. You take your life into your own hands if you're riding a bicycle, and it is anything but what would resemble a main street that we would want to take pride in. And for too long, this area has been overlooked. So next we see the railroad overpass here. This is also extremely dangerous and has been long in need of replacement for years, if not decades. So what I'm here to report on is that thankfully, Missoula County and our partners, the City of Missoula, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the Montana Department of Transportation have been the recipients of a $24 million Reconnecting Communities grant that will be plowed into a transformational project that will add curbs, sidewalks, a new railroad structure, striped pedestrian crossings, all of those elements, lighting, all of those elements that make for a beautiful, a welcoming, an attractive place that we can call home, and there is no reason that every piece and every place in our community should not also have good, solid infrastructure. A transformational project. So, yes, some of you probably expected this one, and you got it, passenger rail. So, in the middle of a pandemic, yes, thank you. In the middle of a global pandemic that I mentioned earlier, in the fall of 2020, Missoula County spearheaded, along with 11 other counties across the state of Montana, in establishing the first ever regional passenger rail authority in Montana using a 1990s era statute that had never been used before. In the years that followed, the brief years that followed, 3 years, we've expanded to 20 counties. We're the largest transportation district in Montana, and our signature accomplishments over the past 3 years have been, one, working across the aisle with members of Congress to get into the bipartisan infrastructure law language that would direct the U.S. Department of Transportation to conduct a nationwide study of restoring discontinued Amtrak routes, and I'm happy to report that the North Coast Hiawatha route through Missoula, Montana is one of the preferred routes that will be recommended for restoration later this year to the U.S. Congress. The second piece, and this is even the bigger story, Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority was the sponsor of bringing in the North Coast Hiawatha route into the Corridor Identification Program. This is a new program of the US DOT that puts us on a path for project development. This is not just a feasibility study. It's not just a set of recommendations. We are in the project development pipeline, and that's a big deal. The bigger deal, though, has less to do with transportation than it does with what this means for possibility. And by that I mean, think back to that map of the state of Montana. When is the last time that you saw a Missoula County collaborating with a Dawson, a Custer, a Webo County? Anybody? Never, it's never happened before. Yet we were able to come together, which is for me symbolic of the possibility that we can still agree on a few things in this country. We have crossed east-west, blue-red, urban-rural divides, and this provides me inspiration. In closing, a little over a week ago, I attended the funeral of a good friend who died way too young. In his benediction during that funeral service, the language of that benediction, which dates back to the 19th century, goes something like this. Life is short, and there is too little time to gladden the hearts of those who walk the way with us. So be swift to love, make haste to be kind. Life is indeed short and fleeting and precious, and any moment it could be our last. In this period of political turmoil, red-hot rhetoric, inability to give one another the benefit of the doubt, at a time where we're expecting the worst from one another rather than the best, how is it that we can reinfuse into public and civic life, civic dialogue, the language of love, of care, of kindness? Because at the end of the day, I think that is the definition of being useful. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Mr. Commissioner, can you all hear me okay? All right, good. Well, it is a pleasure to be here with you, and it's a pleasure to be on stage with two phenomenal leaders for our community. I'm honored to be alongside each of you today, and happy to be where I am in the speaking order. You know, when you write a speech, they always give you advice, right? Have a really good opening, have a strong closing, because everyone forgets the middle. So I'm right there in the middle. I'm going to be short. I'm going to be succinct. Right? I'm the parent of twin 13-year-olds who give me really about 30 seconds before they tune me out. So I've had to become a lot more succinct. So I will do my very best today. And look, you know, those of you who've been around Missoula a while, you know you're not going to get out of a conversation with that Strohmaier guy without hearing about passenger rail, and it's just accepted. And you're not going to get out of a conversation with that Bodnar guy without hearing about the two words that you heard Dave mention at the outset, and those two words that sum up our university's mission and everything we're focused on. And those two words are inclusive prosperity. You know, those are the words that sit at the heart of our mission, and you know, which boiled down to its essence. Our university is here to ensure that every single member of our community, regardless of how much money you have, what your political preference is, who your parents were, where you come from, who you love, where you went to high school, everyone. Our focus is to enable everyone to reach their unique full potential, and that's who we are at UM. As we get started, can I ask Grizzlies in the audience, alumni, to raise your hand? All right. How about people who have kiddos at the university? All right. How about people who are employing Grizz alumni? There we go. You know, this is the impact of the University of Montana. And that's why we take our mission so seriously. Because we know that a large number of the folks who are making decisions about the future direction of our community have an education, a sense of purpose that was, at least in part, cultivated by UM. And our focus on inclusive prosperity is a collective one as well. Essentially, it is about fostering healthy, engaged communities. And this ethos is why UM was named this past fall for the second year in a row as the #1 university in the entire United States for public and community service. I'm clapping because I didn't have anything to do with that. You all did. Seriously. You know, this ethos isn't new, right? This was at the heart of the founding intent for our university 131 years ago. And the mission of our university, this focus on providing wide open access to a world-class university, is a mission that we continue to all share responsibility for today. And I say that not just as the person who happens to be leading the university right now, right? I am just the temporary steward of this university. Right? We all own this. And I emphasize this, more importantly, as the father of 3 young kids that are growing up in this community, who, along with their peers, are counting on us to pass on to them a city, a community, a university, a state that is in better shape than when we found it. And that steadfast commitment to future generations is, it really sits at the heart of everything we do at the University of Montana. And it's why we're so excited about the tremendous progress we've seen at the university over the past few years. You know, UM is firmly in a cycle of growth. In fact, this past fall, we saw the largest year-over-year enrollment growth at the University of Montana in 14 years. And this is in the midst of a significant decline in college attendance nationally. So your university is bucking national trends. And not only are entering classes larger in size, you know, this fall's class included 20% more Montanans than just 2 years ago. So more and more Montanans are putting their faith in the University of Montana. Also, we had 20% more student veterans join the university this year than the year before. And since 2018, our Native American student enrollment is up 30%. So this is inclusive prosperity in action. Now, in today's climate, you're going to hear a lot of universities that, or university presidents that might stand up here and brag about how selective they are and how they are so good that they only accept, 1 out of 10 people that apply. As if somehow the fact that they turn away 90% of their applicants mean that they provide a higher quality education. That is absolute baloney. Don't believe anybody that says that. And here at the University of Montana, we will never measure our success by whom we keep out. We measure our success by how well we enable every single person who comes through our doors to achieve their full potential. That's what inclusive prosperity is about. And of course, that means that it's not just enough to bring in larger classes. We have to ensure that our students persist and succeed to graduation at higher rates. And that's why we're so excited that this fall we posted the highest first-year retention rate in the history of the University of Montana, and that over the past 5 years, we've seen our 4-year graduation rate increase by 1/3. That's inclusive prosperity. That's what we're working on together. This is also why we launched last year the Grizzly Promise program, which promises to any Montanan that comes from a family making $50,000 or less that they can come to our state's flagship university tuition free. Because we believe that a college, because gaining a college education shouldn't have to come with a lifetime sentence of debt. Now, we also want to be clear, though, that this focus on wide open access does not come at the expense of quality. Take Coulter Stevenson, for example. Coulter Stevenson from Amsterdam, Montana, population 207. This year received a Rhodes Scholarship, UM's first in 30 years. Coulter beat out the top students at every Ivy League institution to receive a Rhodes Scholarship. And this fall, he'll join Beatrix Frizzell, a Polson pirate over in Oxford. Bea received a Marshall Scholarship last year, also a Truman Scholarship. And those two are going to have a great time. They're going to have the collective challenge on that 3rd Saturday in November of finding somewhere in Oxford a pub where they can watch the Grizz bring home the Brawl of Wild trophy again. I'll try to help them. And that pattern of excellence is continuing. Just last week, Jaden Stansberry, a junior at UM, and who was the chief push for the Foresters Ball this year, received another Truman Scholarship. So the Grizz are on a roll. So is our research enterprise, as you heard at the outset. 2 years ago, we achieved a decades-long goal of achieving R1 status. Our research output has approximately doubled in the past 7 years. Tremendous growth in research. And look, that research is not just expanding the boundaries of human knowledge, it's creating hundreds of millions of dollars of economic impact here in our community, creating jobs and entire new companies. That, too, is inclusive prosperity. And, of course, who's been on campus lately? It's a little noisy, it's a little dusty. Yes, we are undergoing our largest infrastructure refresh in campus history. Creating living and learning spaces that are safe, that are healthy, that are conducive to our students' learning. So you'll see a brand new dining hall coming online this summer. We've refreshed multiple dorms. You'll also see our power plant being upgraded. And that project is not only breathing new life into a 75-year-old heating plant, it's also, by turning it into a combined heat and power plant, it's providing $1.2 million worth of electricity to campus, and it represents the largest greenhouse gas reduction project in campus history. So really exciting infrastructure growth over there. And of course, we're always working to have a vibrant campus environment for our students. If If you went to a Grizz game this fall, you saw the power of the 12th man. You saw our student section, the zoo crew, roaring back to life. You've seen the Foresters Ball tradition coming back into a vibrant new chapter, which is so important for our students to have those opportunities to engage. Because frankly, despite all the good news, there's a lot of challenges we face too, right? The title of today is Opportunities and Challenges, and nationally we're seeing college attendance rate plummet. There are 2.5 million fewer Americans in college today than there were in 2011. For the first time in this country's history, we will have a young generation that has less education than the generation that came before it. I think this is one of the largest national security challenges our country's facing. Happy to talk about that. But while we're bucking these trends at UM, we can't ignore them. We have to adapt. And that's why you'll see us undergoing a deep examination of what we offer and why. That's why you'll see us focusing on academic and career pathways that run the gamut from short-term workforce training to 4-year graduate degrees and beyond. And that's why we launched Accelerate Montana, which is our statewide workforce training program. Some of you in here have partnered with us on that. But over the past 3 years, we've put over 1,500 people through short-term training programs in direct collaboration with employers to get people back into the workforce, to reskill or upskill, which is going to be absolutely necessary over the course of one's career in today's rapidly changing economy. So change is hard, but we're embracing our obligation to change because we are so committed to this idea of inclusive prosperity. And that change doesn't happen if we're sitting still, and that change doesn't happen with all of you. So I do want to end where I started by thanking you for your collaboration, for your love, for your care for this university that means so much, not just to all of us who happen to work there today, but for all of those who are going to come after us. So thank you again for letting me be a part of this, and I got to end with a big go Grizz.
Hi, everybody. Hey. Oh, I'm in this mode. Anybody join me in this? It's good to see everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to my esteemed colleagues, Commissioner Strohmaier and President Bodnar. Wonderful to be up here with you. Really wonderful to be here with all of you. Thank you for joining. I am all in 5 months of my tenure as mayor of Missoula, and I have to say that it shouldn't be a surprise, but I have witnessed the potential of what it's like to work with really incredibly dedicated residents and folks that are in elected official positions and leading our community to really build a strong future for Missoula. And so the view is vast and wonderful from here. Our theme today is taking on challenges and finding opportunities, and I did want to illustrate a few of the things that we are doing at the City of Missoula to do just that. One of the things that we all know standing here, and Commissioner Strohmaier mentioned the pandemic of 4 years ago, really about 4 years ago from this date, really we were in such a different situation. And our communities, both Missoula included, but communities everywhere, have changed significantly. And Missoula, we have seen a lot of different changes. We've seen changes socially, we've seen changes obviously economically. Most notably, of course, we've seen significant changes with housing pressures, right? We've all lived through an inflation, the highest rate of inflation in 40 years, and while wages, they did increase, but a lot of those have been absorbed by that inflation, and we're still working through all that. And one of the challenges that we are working together on is the challenge that some people in our community struggle to stay housed. They struggle to find mental and behavioral health care, physical health care, and struggle to find the services that they need to live well. We have people living unsheltered and living in encampments without having basic needs met. And that's all the while our community's shelter system is working to keep pace. The city has been a convener. We have been an administrator of funding, and we are finding ourselves in the center of this challenge more than we ever have been. we have to address the public and safety and health of all of our community. And the challenges posed by folks that are sleeping outside and unsheltered, we need to address the challenges for those folks that are unsheltered, for the folks living in homes, as well as businesses. Homelessness is a national challenge, and it is exacerbated by local conditions. And since taking office, I have convened a local working group, and that working group is made up of all of the city council, myself as an elected leader, as well as a municipal court judge, and then representatives from around the community that represent certain interests that give us a wide variety of interests. That includes business interests, it includes neighborhood representatives, social service providers, and folks that have lived experience with homelessness are at the table with us. We are in we will have our fourth of 5 meetings this coming Wednesday. And the idea behind this is that this group of people will bring a vast amount of perspective to recommend actionable recommendations to City Council for ways that our community can positively address and assist the city in managing these issues and situations that come about from folks that are living and surviving outside. Stay tuned. We're excited to bring updates to you and some actions that we are taking as a community, and not only local government, but our partners in the private sector. So ideas for accountability, ideas for resources, and new pathways are underway. So going back to our theme, the opportunity here is to really bring people together of varying perspectives, of listening to folks that do have different interests, and making sure that this invites understanding, it invites fresh ideas, and community-wide commitment to a really challenging issue that will be with us probably for some time. But local government cannot do this alone. We absolutely need you. We need all of us. It takes all of us to lean in, to try different things, with the goal of getting people reconnected to social connections, a roof over their head, food, dignity, and purpose. And efforts that we have achieved as a community really have helped and resulted in things. We just concluded our previous community plan to address homelessness, and from that, we developed a coordinated entry system with peers where we are helping people reconnect with services much easier. We built 30 permanent supportive homes in our community, which means people are accessing an affordable small apartment and they have services to help them be successful. We have Project Shelter, where we have a coordinated effort amongst ourselves to actually help people find shelter. We have made a difference. In fact, we have our new consultant that came to the city working with the community to put our new community plan together. And I was so delighted to hear that Missoula has a much lower rate of chronically homeless folks that are living unsheltered than the majority of the United States. So despite the fact that we are still managing a very complex and challenging situation, we are doing well. We have to know that our plans are actually making a difference. This morning I received an email, and I don't often receive emails quite like this all the time because people are frustrated. So I wanted to share with you this really sweet message that to me really illustrates what Missoula is about. It says, "Dear Mayor Davis and City Council, I want to thank you all for the work you are doing to address the complex issue of urban camping. I appreciate you forming a group to discuss this challenging issue. It is also nice that the Missoulian is reporting more of what is being done. As a citizen that has compassion for those unhoused, but also one that desires safe, clean spaces in our parks, river areas, streets, and walking paths, I commend you for all of your hard work." And so for my colleagues that are out there that are participating in this work, and then those, obviously we're working together as well as the university and as the county, know that your work is being seen and it is being appreciated. Thank you. So we have to work on things simultaneously. And our city strategic plan looks at our decision-making through 3 lenses. That is climate, equity, and housing. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the latter in terms of some things that we have going on right now. As many of you know, we are conducting a significant overhaul of our development codes, and so that Unified Development Ordinance is underway. It's a process we set out that was a 3-year process, and we're about halfway through. But in the meantime, we've made some changes that impact the ability to build businesses and homes more easily. We responded to some state law mandates, but even just 2 weeks ago, the City Council passed some updates that make it easier to build accessory dwelling units, or what you would call granny flats, you know, that cottage home in your alley. It's a way in which we can utilize our existing infrastructure. We can have multi-generational families living together, and it is a way to help people pay their mortgages. So those are easier to build. The other thing that we've done is made it easier so you can have a business on the first floor and residential on top. And lastly, we've done some changes where some of the items you would have to come through city council to have a fairly long process are now going to be done administratively by staff, thereby making development choices easier. Now, we are going through a very robust development update, and that will be complete by the end of this year, early into the spring. But those are some changes that we've done now because we recognize what the community needs and what the community needs to see happen. So planning for the future and responding to today are things that we do as local government and institutions like the University of Montana. And a couple of those things, I can't see, okay, I think I can barely see what's up there, but I think what we have up there is a diagram of the Scott Street property. And this is an opportunity to talk about something that, again, we have taken advantage of a legislative change. In 2023, the Montana legislature enabled our redevelopment agency to utilize tax increment financing to actually help construct vertical construction. So what we have done is created a workforce housing program. This project, you know, is something that we have been partnering on as local government, and a major aspect of the work we do and a major part of who we are our neighborhoods. The neighborhood of the North Side has been working to clean up this old White Pine Sash location for decades. And, but not for local government's willingness to step in, our abilities to combine and use resources. That would continue to be an industrial wasteland today, but it is not. It is actually ready to be used for residences and homes. And we just broke ground this spring with the infrastructure necessary to start the first phase of construction. So is that working, Jenny? Okay. What we have done here, it's a project that's been underway for about 3 years, and we are master planning 9 acres. The city is partnering with Rivara Development LLC, and the first phase is constructing 89 homes for purchase on a community land trust, which means that the land is held in trust and the person buying only buys the home, which thereby making the home more affordable. Half of those, more than half of those, will be affordable or at income restricted, and then half of those will be market rate. The remaining next phase will actually be over 200 market rate apartments. We will see a public park, and then additionally, and again informed by the neighborhood plan, opportunities for neighborhood commercial, childcare facilities, and I already mentioned a park, but more places for people to reconnect. And I bring this up because this is the thing that we're reacting to now. By being able to utilize legislative change and being able to then trigger long-standing goals to create more opportunities for more homeownership and rental opportunities, that folks that are working, learning, and retiring in Missoula have a place to call home. Another example, and this is quickly what the bird's eye view will look like there. And I'm going to next slip to another project. Nope, maybe not. Okay, I'm just going to talk about it. This is a lovely dandelion. No. You might have heard recently that the city has a purchase and sale agreement on a piece of property in Midtown, and this is known as the Southgate Triangle. It is a piece of property that is 10 acres south and west of Bob Ward's. It has been in the planning view of not only local government but neighborhood organizations for decades. The first started in 2000 with the Urban Renewal District, number 3, and most recently in the Midtown Master Plan. The opportunity there, this piece of property is really central to very intensive mixed-use opportunities. Homes, retail, commercial, industrial, manufacturing. There's an opportunity right there, square in the middle of town. And the city's goal here is to acquire that property, and then we will work to put in the public infrastructure that's necessary to develop it. Because right now, that's a piece of land that has no infrastructure to it. So we're talking sewer, water, streets, sidewalks, and we're talking about trails and public parks. That then will be ready, we will be able to sell those pieces of property to the private sector to develop homes, to develop commercial space, and to develop retail. So right now, we just have a purchase and sale. We're doing our due diligence in terms of environmental and in terms of appraisal, but we do look to acquire these parcels within the next few months. All of this is to say that Missoula is willing to invest in strategies to be resilient and plans that we have put together for the future of our community. And there are things that my colleagues spoke about today that we wrestle and need to respond to. We just unfortunately, got the news about the forest products industry really shifting in Western Montana. And we're lucky to have the programs that we do with the Job Service, University of Montana's Accelerate Montana, and Missoula Economic Partnership to get those folks connected to new job opportunities and retraining. The city's long-term planning, both with our long-range transportation plans and our ability to use urban renewal districts, will position us to be at the table for when that property is ready to be redeveloped with new owners. And so, responding to the needs that we have today, but then looking out into the future is what we are tasked with as local government. And so, the last that I would like to say is that we are all grappling with change, and it's here. I mean, whether we want it or not. And but I really do believe that we have the opportunity to guide it in the direction that we want. And my colleague spoke to the way in which we will keep a positive approach looking forward. And I believe that we're all committed to a healthy, safe, and prosperous community for all. So thank you for being here today.
All right, everyone's smart now. No one's got questions, right? We can all go home? No one wants to go home. So now we're at the opportunity here where we do table talk. So here's how table talk works for those that are not aware. So we will take a 10-minute break. During that time at your table, you're tasked with two jobs. First, find a table ambassador, someone that's going to raise their hand and be willing to speak out loud and ask the tough question. And the next one is come up with a common question so we can kind of get to it. As you can see, we have a packed house, so there's a lot of people that are going to have questions. So please, when you're asking the question, get right to it. Clearly state your name. We will have 3 microphones walking the room. They will be holding the mic, so please don't reach out for the mic. They're bigger than me. You could get hurt. So they'll walk around, they will hold the mic for you. Clearly state your name, get to your question as quickly as possible. We understand there's some prerequisite, but don't make it an autobiography. So with that, we will re-adjourn at 12:15. So do we have, at each table, do we have a table ambassador already assigned? If so, raise your hand right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. I see 4 tables. 5. Okay, so here's how this is going to have to work. As I said at the beginning, we're committed to civil discourse. So we ask that you keep your questions respectful and that you avoid making statements. As you can see from the audience, we have a very large number of people want to ask questions. So please get to the question as quickly as possible. We'll also ask that any members of the media save their questions until after the forum. Our panelists should be able to stick around for at least, 3 or 4 hours after this. Okay, maybe briefly. So when asking the question, please be sure to stand up, clearly state your name, avoid statements, and ask one question. Where's Nancy? Okay. Okay, so we will have 3 people walking around this room with microphones. Please make sure you raise your hand between questions, okay? I was chosen to ask the first question, so don't throw anything at me, okay? But hopefully, this is a good example of how questions should go. I already stated my name earlier, so I don't have to say it again. Okay, so this question is for all 3 of you. Given the current state of inflation, averaging 5.4% over the last 3 years, wage growth not keeping up at the same level, and families and small businesses having to make difficult decisions by making cuts to their budgets just to survive, what actions, decisions have you made to help ease the burden of tuition or tax burdens of those families?
Well, thank you. I mean, this is a question that is on all of our minds every day. Anybody who leads an organization here, anybody who has employees knows that, frankly, our biggest challenge is attracting, supporting, and keeping our great employees at the University of Montana. And I know families across our community are struggling with the tremendous increase in cost of living here. And so, we've done a number of things at the University of Montana. You heard, of course, the creation of the Grizzly Promise program to help those families, even though the Montana University system education is one of the most valuable and cost-effective in the country. Our in-state tuition and fees for a resident are below $8,000 a year. That's about 26% lower than the public universities in our surrounding states. So in the Western Interstate Compact for Higher Education, a Montana resident pays about 26% less than the average of those other states. So first and foremost, keeping tuition low. Second is by providing those opportunities for financial aid for those students who are in need, raising money via donors for scholarships. If anybody wants to contribute to support our students, we're happy to support our students. And then, frankly, making it easier also for students to access federal aid dollars. And this is actually something we're working on it's a real challenge for us right now, is that the federal government has reformed the FAFSA, which is the application for student aid, and that process has been problematic, frankly, and something we're working through to make sure that students see that. So it's a continual battle, keeping tuition as low as we possibly can, while also trying to pay a living wage to our employees, which is very difficult. And so we have those competing dynamics of trying to have affordability, but also retaining world-class talent and faculty and staff at the university. It's something we face every day. And the final point I'll make is a big part of our efforts to renew our dorms at the university is in response to the housing market. For a student today, living near the university is all but impossible on their budgets. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we looked at our infrastructure at the university. We looked at our age of plant ratio, about 29% older than peer institutions. So anybody who lived in Craig, Elrod, Dunaway Hall, the average age of those dorms is about 86 years. I joked with our staff. I said on move-in day, when I help students move in, it's okay when a parent says, "Hey, this dorm hasn't changed since I was here." That's actually okay when the parent says that, but when the grandparent says that, then you gotta worry. And that was the way our dorms are. So you've seen us overhaul Panzer, you've seen us Knowles, you'll see us pending board approval break ground on a new residence hall this summer. And the point there is to provide housing for our students, but also in doing so relieve some of the housing pressure on the Missoula economy. So this is something we focus on all the time. It is one of the biggest challenges that we face at the university.
Thanks. So I'll just name three things which we could spend a lot more time going into in detail, but just in terms of recognition of the hard position that many, maybe all in our community are facing relative to inflation, finances, etc. First, let's take this one head on, and I will at some point perhaps defer to a colleague on this, but I will just give the ever so brief thumbnail sketch of taxation. So yes, you get your tax bill from Missoula County, but that includes taxes for the school district, fire districts, if you live in the city of Missoula, Missoula City, and also Missoula County as a slice of that. This last year, Missoula County, in recognition of the inflation that we are in and our desire to be as frugal as possible, we kept our tax rate, I should not say tax rate, we kept the increase of our Missoula County budget to 5.4%, lower than the rate of inflation at the time. So then you wonder, well, why did my taxes go up 20 or 30%? And part of that, a big part of that, is because of a tax shift from residential to centrally assessed, meaning telecoms, meaning railroads, meaning entities that are assessed differently than you and your residential property are susceptible to. So anyway, that is something that we've tried hard to do, is keep our taxes as Missoula County as low as we can, recognizing that ultimately tax reform is going to be necessary, and that is going to have to happen in Helena at the legislature. Secondly, recognizing our lane of responsibility as local government. What can we do to make this place more affordable, to create more homes and more housing? So something not sexy at all is updating our land use planning, updating our zoning that allows for development to be done in a more streamlined fashion that recognizes the importance of more of a variety of housing types, and where that will come to play in the very near future is out near the Y. We have created a targeted economic development district out there that will allow the opportunity to reinvest dollars, tax increment dollars, into infrastructure that will set the stage and set the table for thousands of new housing units over the next number of years. And so just from the standpoint of housing stock and availability, that is something that we can work on in local government, and it's not the full extent of the solution or the solutions that we might like to see, but it's part of the array of options and solutions that we're trying to bring to the table.
Thank you for this question, and Dave, thank you for giving the tax primer. You know, one of the things that is meaningful to mention is that one of the other elements that we are taxed on as property owners is our state share in helping other communities pay for education. And so, you know, this is something that is a reality. And that is a separate taxing body. It's a separate taxing jurisdiction. But, you know, Missoula County is responsible to pass that, you know, tax bill on to us as property owners. And I have never seen so many people interested in and having a conversation about taxes, about property taxes. Good. I mean, you know, this is something that is really complex in the state of Montana, and it deserves our attention because we are in 21st century Montana, but our taxing structure is not. And we really need to give this attention, and it is something at the city of Missoula that we are participating with other municipalities around the state to get prepared for the 2025 session. And in addition to other municipalities, also businesses, because what Commissioner Strohmaier was mentioning in terms of those of us in the room that, and if you're a renter, by the way, you pay taxes too. You just don't necessarily maybe get that tax bill, but you see it show up in your rent. You know, classification 4, which is generally homeowners and small commercial small business, we have a number of different businesses that are also interested in this conversation, which is fantastic because it takes a wide perspective and a lot of different voices to make sure that we are holding folks that are in the legislature accountable to this very real issue on the local level. Now, as the city of Missoula, one thing we are doing in this next year, I've proposed a new process for the way in which we are taking on the budget. I heard quite a bit during the campaign that folks want more engagement opportunities. They want more transparency around the budget. And again, very complex, because when we talk about the way local government is funded, we start talking about the general fund and things that are, you know, paid for out of the general fund and specific districts like the road district or parks district. And they operate differently according to state law. And so what I've done is flipped the schedule. So rather than present the mayor's executive budget at the beginning and then have council work through that, here comments and then accept amendments and pass a budget. We are doing it differently, where we've started out with every single department having to produce program inventories. So we went through and said, everything that you have an account code for in your department, here's a one-sheeter, describe it. I want to know if it's required to provide that service, or if it is something that we are doing because it's the value that our community has enjoyed and asked for. That should help both for me as your new mayor understand the wide range of different things that we are funding as your city, but also city council and the public. So that information will inform each department's priority budgets, and they will present those to city council in advance of the mayor's executive budget. That'll give the chance for city council to ask questions, identify their specific priorities, the public to be engaged in that, and then I have a chance to see and react to that as I then put together the mayor's budget, which will be presented with then another opportunity for council to offer amendments, and we will approve that budget generally midsummer, probably around the 1st of August, after we hear what our tax values will be. So that's a new schedule that ideally identifies ways that we can, one, find efficiencies, and two, really demonstrate some of the really incredible programs that offer you value. We were just talking about taxes this morning. It's tax day. A lot of people wrote checks or to the federal government and to the state government. And one thing that I reflect on is that I can look around, and of course, yeah, I am in the mayor's seat, so I do see a lot of things that local government does, but I can see a lot of things that my taxes go to locally, and I really sometimes can't tell actually on the federal or state level, like, what is that funding? And it's all good, I'm sure, but I want to say something about our local tax system, is that it's you and me, and we put our priorities forward. And while I totally 100% hear and understand the impact that we're all facing when it comes to the pinch on our cost of living, and we are responsive to that, I want you to know that we are using your money wisely, and we want to continue to hear your ideas as we move this process I mentioned forward. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to mention the rotation's going to start here, and then over on the end over there. So, Eric, you're up.
Great. Our table had a broad-based homeless, unhoused, Gwen Jones, City Council, representing my table of lovely people here. We had kind of a broad-based, unhoused, homeless population question. Setting aside voting, which is the basic threshold of civic engagement in our community, setting that aside, beyond voting, what does city and/or county government need from our community to effectively address homeless and unhoused issues? It's probably Mayor Davis, but maybe county also can chime in on this.
All right, Councilor Jones, thank you for the question. What do we need? Beyond voting. I would say what I just spoke about in terms of the city identifying priorities for what resources we are able to appropriate in order to help connect people with resources. That's one way to be engaged, to share your opinion, to show support. The other thing that I would say is that there are ways that community members really can be part of the solution. And one of the things that we've been talking about with folks that are in this room today, in fact, is an example other communities have utilized, and it is where, like a faith-based community that has a large parking lot, right? Churches have buildings and parking lots. One of the ways that other communities have facilitated a portion, right? How can I have some impact is a safe parking program where through a coordinated effort and way in which folks, a small number of folks are able to access that parking lot for overnight stays, that it would be in coordination with local government, but it would likely, it's the private sector stepping forward and saying, how can I connect people to the basic needs, right? A bathroom, a shower, trash receptacles, and then also connecting them with people, with connection. You know, this is ultimately one of the things that that we can all do the most. Folks that are in this extraordinarily challenging situation, one thing that they're lacking the most is connection from you and I. There's a book out there, When We Walk By, and it illustrates some very poignant stories around the amount of dignity that has been stripped from folks over the course of their life and the circumstance that they're in. And I understand your frustration, and I have it too. And then sometimes I just need a reminder for the fact that these are human beings that are in one of the toughest situations of their life, potentially their children's lives. And what can we do as people in our community, as neighbors, to help folks recognize that maybe what we need to do is figure out a way that we finance a rotating shower system. You know, we are in Montana, there's complications with weather, but some of the things that folks don't have basic access to, like a shower, like you and I probably had one this morning, kind of just start your day that way. Don't really think about the easy access that and what that means for us, right? Imagine not having one for a week, and then go get a job. So, you know, some basic things I think where we can partner, maybe potentially we could raise some private dollars to create something like that, and then work with places around, including Missoula County Public Schools and places where we know folks that are living houseless that may need access to those kinds of things would be able to connect with some very basic needs that help them have dignity and start their day.
A couple of thoughts. One, beyond local government, when we're talking about houselessness, homelessness, this is something that goes way beyond simply those of us living here in the city of Missoula and Missoula County. This is a regional, it's a statewide, it's a national challenge. So please do also engage your state and federal elected officials, not just determining whether you're going to vote for someone or not, but regularly and often reach out to them and make sure this is on their radar screens. Secondly, rather than parsing whether we should be putting a hand out or giving someone a hand up or a hand out, just put out your stinking hand and try to help one another. I mean, to be blunt, to tear off something that Andrea just said, as far as opportunities for faith communities. I don't know how many of you out here today are part of some faith community, but there is opportunity there. One of the real success stories that we've seen over the past few years is what's called the temporary safe outdoor space. And this has been a multi partner endeavor with United Way, but also with Hope Rescue Mission, a faith-based community. I think they have shown a model of how a community of folks united around a vision, a faith vision, can work with local government to really impact folks in a meaningful way. This is a small community as far as the actual temporary safe outdoor space, a small community of about 30 shelters that has seen over the past number of years since this came into existence a 63% success rate in moving folks from this temporary housing into permanent housing. And that is a huge success story, and that would not be the case were it not for a faith community in Missoula stepping up.
Thank you. My name's Bob Carter, and I have a little story to tell you. Okay, we'll just do a question. It has to do with urban camping. How do we combine both the human concerns and humanity concerns with the business concerns of urban camping? Mayor Davis just mentioned the 2 new properties in town that would be purchased. And how do we prevent or solve the issue, or try to solve the issue, of trying to keep those from turning into de facto camps?
Thank you, Bob, for that question. The recommendations that we look forward to seeing from this working group, the working group it's titled Urban Camping Working Group, and I know that language is not always helpful, and some people quite honestly take offense, right? Because when we talk about camping, we talk about recreating and enjoying ourselves, and we know that people that are sleeping in tents on sidewalks and in our parks are not out there because they're camping and recreating and enjoying themselves. But it is a way that we are identifying what we're talking about here. And so accessing city-owned land and public land in the murky zone we are in with the current legal atmosphere, the 9th District Court of Appeals has 2 rulings that have made it so the city and the community needs to be very clear about where people can be and where they can't be. And where they can be is a really challenging question to answer. So the recommendations that come forward from this working group, I envision there being a set of policy decisions that will likely update the city's ordinance. We currently have an ordinance on the books that doesn't allow camping anywhere. It's been in, but it's on the books for decades, but it's not in compliance with the 9th District Court of Appeals. And so we will be looking at how we articulate that well, and there are communities that we have already borrowed a draft from, but there's also things that we can look at from other communities. We may then need to sign areas that are no trespassing on certain areas, and then finding other places where people can be. As many of you know, the Johnson Street facility, which the city purchased, is several years ago at the Missoula Rail Link area. I was going to say at the Missoula Rail Link Park, but that was the first initiative when we acquired that land. From Missoula Rail Link, the idea there was an urban renewal opportunity. And we did. We got a park built in an area that was severely lacking open space and public land. And we happened to have that warehouse that was an old church. And our community desperately needed a place for people to go so they did not die on the streets, because several years ago we did have people dying of hypothermia in the winter. And our shelter at the Poverello Center shelter on Broadway was full. And so we did allow this warehouse to be basically accessed during the winter. And as our acute issues of folks sleeping outside and unsheltered continued to grow, this is the first year where we have been able to open this facility up year-round. So as of right now, April, this would be April, May, will be the first spring that we have folks in it. And we are working together to, it's not a permanent location for a shelter, and it was not built for a shelter. So it's not awesome to be in, but it's better than sleeping out on the streets. And we are working with our partners, the Poverello Center there, to find simple ways to make it more comfortable for the guests while we still access this as a shelter, and looking at different opportunities so people will want to use that site. And then we're going to need to come up with ways in which we will figure out where people can be and where they can't. You know, a lot of conversation has been around, do we have another authorized campsite? Very extraordinarily complex, but I invite that conversation to the table, because we need to ask our service partners and those others in the community, how can we do it? The way that it was done a couple of years ago didn't work. And it's okay to admit that. It didn't work. So what would work, and what do we need to make that work? And service provider capacity, resources, are an absolute issue. Absolutely. We are a state in the nation that does not have resources that other communities can access to help support them in that way. And so, to Commissioner Strohmaier's point, talk to your state legislators and talk to your federal delegation. And instead of, and I, you know, with all due respect, I appreciate okay, we hear you, but I really want to see some action at both of those levels, at the state and the federal level, because this is a situation we cannot tackle alone. And so there's going to be a host of recommendations I hope to come along with, also ways in which the private sector can engage. We gave some examples earlier about ways that there may be opportunities for the private sector to have programmatic ways to help supplement what the city can do, both from a policy and an appropriation standpoint, right? What can the city do? The city can create policy, and the city can appropriate a limited number of dollars we have through the budget process. And then beyond that, how are we best utilizing those with the private sector to make the most impact we can for folks? And we have to decide if we're going to put access to portalets around town. What is our tolerance level as a community? I mean, I ask you to walk away and think about this, because people say that all the time. We'll just put more toilets out and trash containers and sharps, and let's get real about where we're going to do that, and how we can observe, how we can make sure it's done to the best of our ability in terms of safety, sanitation. If people aren't able to access the shelter for various reasons, do we tolerate somebody sleeping outside a little bit here and there? What's the level of tolerance we have as a community? It's a question that we all need to ask ourselves. It's not an easy answer. Thank you.
Yeah, just one quick anecdote of a success story that goes a little farther upstream. So for me, one thing that we should not lose sight of is the question of how do we keep people from becoming unhoused in the first place? And so a recent example, Missoula County, working with other partners, was able to, in the community of Lolo, convert basically a manufactured home park, Two Rivers manufactured home park, into a situation where each of those residents was simply renting from a landlord to a resident-owned community. So we have now 59 individuals or thereabouts who are homeowners because of, among other things, we brought to the table some dollars from Missoula County's Housing Innovation Fund, from CDBG, Community Development Block Grant dollars, a program, by the way, which was started by Gerald Ford 50 years ago now. And this has made a huge difference, and this will try to, is part of our attempt to try to stem the tide of folks drifting into houselessness in the first place.
Hello, I'm Dorsey Kafka-Davarskas. I'm a clergy member in the Episcopal Diocese of Montana and here in the community. And at our table, we were wondering about, beyond property taxes and what we see in our tax bills, maybe a couple of funding sources that you are most hopeful about in terms of expanding resource and balancing that obligation.
I think one of my colleagues, Josh Slotnick, is chomping at the bit, and I think there's a microphone within reach.
So thanks. Thanks for that. I'll go back. From Missoula County, 2/3 of the money we spend doesn't come from property taxes. 2/3 of the money we use comes from non-property tax sources. Now, most of that, the big dollar amounts, are for infrastructure. Smaller amounts are for everything else you could think. One of the problems with this is that when we get these grant funds, they come detailed and labeled, and it's not fungible. It's very different than our home finances. And when people talk about governments and budgets, they often say, well, sitting around the kitchen table, we make our budget balance. You should. We can't take money that we got from an infrastructure grant to build a bridge and fix potholes. Or we can't take money we got for redoing South Avenue and addressing homelessness. A whole bunch of our financing issues are triage and making really hard decisions, acknowledging that the needs are greater than the resources available. So in terms of what other pots of money are we out there looking for, this is a relentless quest, and it basically works. I said 2/3 of the money we spend comes from non-property tax sources. Over the last 3 years, the city of Missoula, Missoula County, and the MPO, and the Rail Authority have brought in more than $130 million for infrastructure, which is amazing. We're talking, as Dave pointed out, some transformational projects. They might not fix the potholes this table was talking about, and they're not going to address the houselessness issues you guys were talking about. I get that's not a fully complete answer, but I really want you to know we aren't leaning entirely on property taxes. In fact, the lean is more heavy on non-property tax sources. Now I'll go back to my table.
Hi, Nancy Picard, Partners Hope Foundation. We were talking about childcare, and with childcare prices going up to about $1,000 per child, how can we bring together county resources? We've got some early childhood educators at the table. How can we make childcare more affordable and more prevalent?
Some ideas. Excellent question, and I'm glad you asked about this because we need to get creative. And one of the things that has happened where we have folks now actually operating their businesses and childcare advantage. So it's a partnership with Missoula County Public Schools. It's an opportunity for all of these jurisdictions to be partnered together. And we basically utilized a school that was no longer being utilized for public education. And folks now, through our collaboration with the United Way and others, we have the opportunity to have a place where administration and back-end support is shared amongst childcare providers, because the overhead associated with childcare, of course, is one of the issues that we're running up against, right? We've got folks that are not earning a lot of money, but it still costs $1,000 a month, right? I'm just going to put a plug in here that this is also a national crisis and something we've never dealt with as a nation. So here we are as a locality trying to figure it out, but man, we're scrappy and we're going to continue figuring it out. And so we have an opportunity to take a look at facilities like that where we can utilize a location that's either underutilized or not being used anymore, have some shared administration, make some necessary improvements there, and get folks in there not only to be operating their own businesses, but the system that's been created to basically coordinate with the public. So there is the waiting lists and gaps associated with folks finding childcare, and then childcare providers making sure that all their slots are filled in a timely fashion, have really been able to be improved. And so looking at that and how we then expand those opportunities is essential. The other thing I'll say is that the City of Missoula has, through its Park and Recs department, collaborated with Missoula County Public Schools and Partnership Health Center and the work that we're doing at Lowell School, and as one example of ways that we're basically providing opportunities for kids after school to be connected with different ways to move their body, get connected, tutoring, a number of other things, and parents then are not having to pay for after school care, and they're basically able to work their full day, and kids are having a fulfilling activity, and ways that we can continue to think about how we connect with kiddos and support the families in Missoula.
Well, thank you, Mayor Davis. And I mean, just a quick comment, and thank you, Nancy. I think it's a great question, and I think it starts with valuing caregivers. We don't value caregivers enough across our society, and I think, I'd say that I'm a bit biased. I was raised by two public school teachers. My mom taught kindergarten for 35 years, and watch the impact. And now that's kindergarten. That's not pre-K. You watch the impact that a great teacher can have. Or a great preschool educator. It's tremendous. And we talk about the mission of the university of helping people reach their full potential. Well, look, where's the highest return on those dollars? It's pre-K. It's pre-K education. We know that, right? But we don't invest like that. And so, from a university standpoint, obviously we have a fantastic college of education. We have the lab preschool. We have ASUM, childcare, and yet, when I joined as the president late 2017, I had a preschooler, and we couldn't get her into the lab school. We couldn't get her into ASUM childcare. They were full, right? I'm not going to jump the line because you all hear about that, of course. So, wouldn't do it anyway, but it just speaks to the problem, and so. I think it's a great question. I mean, we're trying to grow the supply. I mean, ultimately, it's a supply problem. We're working on that. But I will tell you, we are seeing at the university and across the state significant declines in the number of people who are entering the education field. Not necessarily the administration side, but enrollment in teaching programs, not just at UM, but we're seeing major challenges there, and it's terrifying for the future of the state. And I think it starts with what we value and what we put resources behind, and we should put a heck of a lot more behind caregivers and primary educators.
I could not agree more, and caregivers not being valued enough extends beyond our kids. To also, I think about my mom, who a number of years ago was in a memory care facility, and I think many of you have similar stories like that. Across the board, caregivers need to be valued much more by our society than they are. In terms of childcare, I would love and welcome to hear any solutions and possible paths forward from anyone out there. One thing that I'm pretty sure I can speak on behalf of my fellow commissioners on, and that is we are not afraid of failing. And if we're going to fail, you might as well fail while you're trying. And you might not always get it right, but let's at least give it our best shot. The example that Mayor Davis mentioned in terms of looking for opportunities to centralize back office administrative support, we in Missoula County government are extremely interested in how to do that effectively in some of our rural outlying areas. So even if you are not located physically as a child care provider in a central location, Cold Springs or school or wherever, if you're in Sealy Lake, if you're in Clinton, if you're in Tura, if you're out in Frenchtown, how can we maybe make your work as a child care provider a little bit easier, more affordable, and more effective by taking off that burden of all of the administrative activities that otherwise you as a single point of contact, single provider would be responsible for.
Hi, I'm Ken Grindy. My table was wondering about, are there any tools available to local government that would slow or prevent the proliferation of remote owners? So those would be individuals or organizations that purchase housing above market, increase property values, but do not live here and export their earnings.
There are question marks coming up here above our heads right now. Josh, did you have something? Oh, he had one little thing. Okay.
Thanks, Ken. So there are some examples from other parts of the country that are not fantastically widespread, that have completely tilted things, but have definitely nodded in the direction that you're talking about. So one of them is in Big Sky, Montana, where the board, I can't remember their actual name, somebody here probably knows that they're the board that collects the local option tax in Big Sky. If you own property in Big Sky, they will give you a chunk of money in trade for you putting a deed restriction on your property that says you can only rent your property to households where at least one person is working 30 hours a week in Big Sky. This is happening in Crested Butte and in Vail as a way to create housing for people who live and work, who work right there. Now, we're attempting to do something similar with home ownership. So you can get down payment assistance if you're going to buy a specific home in Missoula County, only if someone in your household does in-person work in Missoula County, specifically to address the problem you're talking about, where people apply coastal wages to our local housing market and drive the whole thing upward. It's really hard, but there are a couple examples out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Slotnick, for using those examples. And Ken, I want to just highlight that the opportunities that Commissioner Slotnick are mentioning, these are incentives that we can utilize. The stick that you might be thinking about in terms of state legislation is really something that we need to address at the state level. We are in a situation where the localities, whether it be the county or whether it be the city, we are hindered from being able to basically tell somebody from outside of the state of Montana that they can't buy property here. In fact, it's a constitutional issue. So it's something that other states likely probably have that kind of an access, and we do need to address that kind of, the restriction at the state level. Having the opportunity to get creative and find different incentivizing programs is definitely where we're at as a community, and so those kinds of options are out there, and we need to continue to look at that. But I just wanted to make sure that folks understood the kind of situation that we're facing as localities in terms of what we can actually put forward and how we manage through what's available to us via state legislation.
Hi, Jacinda Morjo, United Way of Missoula County and candidate for SD 46. My table was wondering about planned infrastructure increases around the Scott Street Rivera or Midtown projects.
Excellent. Jacinda, thank you for your question. And so the question's regarding infrastructure. There is a host of stuff. I wanted to plug this earlier too. The county also has Missoula Voice. We have Engage Missoula, which is a website dedicated to projects where we're seeking community engagement. So by the way, any ideas that you have around the conversation we're having around urban camping, there's a safe shelter page. We'd love to hear your ideas. Secondly, in terms of infrastructure, there's a lot of information also available on Engage, and so I'll rattle off a few things. One of the things that we're doing as part of the Scott Street Rivara project is the Missoula Redevelopment Agency's infrastructure includes creating sidewalks, curb and gutter, and bike lanes along that corridor. We also have funded currently some traffic mitigation work that we're doing up near Otis. And so that project is moving forward. The details of it, I do not have locked into my mind, but it's all available on that site. The city just did a very large presentation a couple of months ago with the North Side, West Side neighborhood. We hosted it at Burn Street, and we talked about a number of different infrastructure improvements that are currently underway. There's also another that we've identified on, I think it's North 5th, if I'm not mistaken. So we've got a few different projects that we're timing out there. And then, was your question directly related to Scott Street Bridge? I don't think so. Okay, good. Because that's something that I know we all know is a real challenge in that area. But we are keenly aware of, this is the constant trade-off that we're managing, is when we create more home opportunities, which is what our growth policy and our direction from the community is to do on the interior of our city. Then if we're compounding congestion, how do we manage that? And so we continue to support the bus system, which is its own taxing jurisdiction, but we collaborate, both the county and the city collaborate with Mountain Line to make sure that they continue to have frequent and effective service. And so that reduces it offers more choice for folks to get out of a vehicle if you can. And so we're constantly thinking through how we are improving that area. I did mention something earlier that this is, again, far off into the future as we take a look at what opportunities might be available when private property unlocks itself. The Rosebrook property is 240 acres, and there's a lot, to that situation, and it's in private ownership. But as a community, how can we look at, some potential connectivity issues in particular for that neighborhood as that opportunity opens up?
All right. Last thing anyone wanted to do was see me again, right? Well, we're over now, but let me go over a couple things really quick. Thank you, Andrea, Seth, and Dave. Greatly appreciate it. I learned a lot. Obviously, I lost a lot of hair thinking this one through, so it worked out. Again, thank you to our sponsors, especially First Security Bank and Blackfoot Communications. And of course, thank you, our audience. Without you, we don't have this. So hopefully it was very informational for you. Look forward to our May forum, May 13th. That one's on ballot initiatives, so that one should be another kind of packed house. So be there, you'll learn a lot. Reminder, we'll be back to normal time, 11:30 to 1 o'clock. Okay? And with that, thank you all, and have an amazing day.